Welcome to The Real Heal. I am your host, Dr. Renee Wallenstein, also known as the Libidoologist. So if you're ready, let's get into it. Lisa, I am so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here as well.
And, you know, I always say 2023, this is a holistic health podcast, but we're going into topics this year that we've really not talked much about. And your expertise will definitely be shedding some light on different topics we've really never taken a deep dive into. So excited to talk to you today. But before we get into it, why don't you tell us who you are and how you got doing what you're doing today?
Okay, who I am, I think is quite a complex question. I feel I've lived many lives in one, but where I am today is what I classify as a 360 holistic health practitioner, with a lot of neuroscience, and I'm very woo. But what I do is I make neuroscience and woo the same thing and make sense to help people understand that we actually have this innate ability within us. And when we learn how to take control of that, we can really transform our life on many levels. And that's been an evolution for me. I'm in my 50s now, but how I got here really started from when I was a little girl. My earliest memory, I believe, which was the beginning of my journey into me, was when I was 4 years old. My sister and I were called into my parents' room, and there was my dad sitting on the end of his bed with a single suitcase crying. And all he said to us was, I love you, I can't stay here anymore, but I have to leave. And there he did. He walked out the door. And, you know, as a child, probably I don't remember a lot of my childhood because the brain's very protective, keeps us in survival mode. There's a lot of things I don't remember. But what I do know is that a child can only think that they are bad and that they're not loved. And what did they do wrong for a parent to walk out the door? So fear was a primary feeling. And it was fear because we were left at the hands of my mother, who had very violent, narcissistic, psychiatric illness. And so that was really, I think, because I've had to take a lot of layers off over the years, because I put a lot of layers on, and so did life. But what we had a brief chat prior to this conversation here, Dr. Renee, and what I've learnt over the years with all of the things that I'll share a little bit of what has gone on, that life is always happening for us. It's a case of not happening to us. And so when you're living in the midst of trauma, tragedy, illness, all of these horrible things, there's always the power of reflection and looking for what lessons were in that. And then helping us understand that a lot of that was to help you get to the next step of your life of growth. When I was about 6, you know how there's athletic carnivals at school, you do track and field or you do swimming. Well, I threw myself into an Olympic-sized swimming pool and started to swim at a school carnival, got about halfway and started to sink. But somebody pulled me out. But for some unknown reason, I decided I loved swimming and I wanted to do swimming training. And I think that in itself, upon reflection, was my little Lisa telling me that there was guidance in that, because I ended up in a squad that was full of champions with a champion mindset. that were very strong-willed and could take control of their mind. We had national swimmers, world title swimmers, and even an Olympian in our club. And to me, they were my heroes, my mentors. I felt safe with them. I could be, I swam morning and night, so 5 hours at training and 6 hours at school, so I didn't have to be at home, because that was just a constant state of fear. And every day was unpredictable. Every day was violent, whether it be the psychiatric side of it or the physical violence. So I was very different to my sister. I went inward, and she fought her way, which didn't really do any good. That just created a lot more of the storm. But I always had this little inner voice inside of me just saying, Lisa, everything's going to be okay. This is not normal what you're living in, and everything's going to be okay. And of course, that didn't help stop the feelings of just of fear and loneliness and all of those neglect issues. And as we know, that children who are neglected or in, living in states of violence, these are the years that actually frame you. So it creates a lot of dysfunction, not only emotionally, but physically as well, because in medicine, we know that stress creates disease. And so I became a loner. I also became a champion. I felt that the more I could win, the more love and attention I might get from my mother, which didn't work. It actually had a bit of an adverse effect. It became her obsession. And so I ended up, by the age of 14, when you start to hate something, what happens once again is your body creates a distraction. So, if you're constantly trying to get fit, but you get an injury, there's always this obstacle. Well, I kept getting an ear infection, which took me out of the pool. And so eventually I just thought, because I started to lose hearing in my ear, it was very painful. And I just thought, well, I have to stop this because I'm no longer swimming for me, I'm swimming for her. And that's not, you can't be fulfilled and you probably just go backwards in the process. You just don't even want to, you burn out, I guess, is the statement. But the next step that happened was I was invited to go along to a martial arts club. And I thought, well, I was about 14. I thought, this is great because I can learn how to defend myself properly. But there was a metaphysics component to this club. They did Tai Chi, they did meditation, they really went deep into the Eastern arts and the ability of understanding how to channel what we call Qi, our internal energy, and be able to use it in various ways. And for me, I actually felt like this was normal. I was very good at it, but I felt like I was home. So there was a level of that inner knowing, that inner voice was saying, you're on the right path here, Lisa. So that was sort of, and my auntie she was an acupuncturist as well. So I'd had the connection of Eastern holistic practice compared to, obviously Western medicine. And that was sort of normal to me as well, because I started to get a lot of childhood illness, which was unexplainable. Today we call that stress. That my auntie would just try and give me acupuncture a lot of the time. So for me, having needles stuck in me was quite normal. When I was 15, because I was, as a teenager, and we all know this because we've all been through that, that's where you're really starting to become a person in society, you know, stand your ground a little bit, be dominant. And for me, because I had this mindset component, and when we were swimming training, we did a lot of what we call now mind movies, of winning the race in your mind. So your body doesn't know the difference, your brain doesn't know the difference between you actually going through the motions in your brain or actually physically doing it. So there's been lots and like gazillions of research on that, especially with elite athletes over the years. So for me, this was actually all part of my life from a very little girl. So once again, when I said these things are happening for us, it really is the magic breadcrumbs of who we are evolving into. As I mentioned, when I was about 15, I was starting to get a bit stronger. And to me, that was just another reason for my mother to become very challenged by me. And she did start to threaten me that while I was sleeping, she was going to kill me. And for me, that was just like the last straw. I just thought, I have to get out of here. And so I ran away as a 15, 16-year-old. I think I was 15, to a halfway house. Back in the day, you know, there was not a lot of child support. It was more a house of drug addicts and criminals and that kind of thing. But it was away, and there was this overwhelming sense of relief that I had actually gotten out of there, because it just, the fight and flight response was just 24/7 going on in my body. And as we know, these hormones of stress degrade the body. They create so much stress and disease in the body that we get on this downward spiral. And by the age of 17, I'd actually joined the army. For me, it was the next step to run away, get away as far as I could. And but I was also suffering a lot of health problems. I developed endometriosis. I also had an eating disorder. Interestingly, people who have very bad relationships with food, it's generally something that's happened in our life, and where we're using that as our escape. And for people who have had things along the lines of anorexia nervosa, that's about the only power you have in your life. It takes a lot of willpower to starve yourself. And I became very, very ill. I was about, oh gosh, I don't even know the pound transfer. It was probably somewhere between 100 and 510 pounds, maybe a bit less, that I got. So it was, I was hospitalized.
Wow.
But it was the only thing I could control. So that was a teen event as well. And we see that a lot in teens, is that eating disorders are very common. And one thing I like to say, Dr. Renee, is that we are born perfect. We are born these bubbling blisses of joy, which is our true self. And then we get humanized. We have all of these rules, all of these conditions, all of the stuff, all of the baggage of our parents and their parents, all of that put on us through our most impressionable years, that create a lot of problems. And then we get to a point in life where you can't go any lower. You've had enough. You have this inner calling within you that you are made for so much more. you know that you're not fulfilling your life's purpose. And a lot of people now, I call in the Great Awakening that's going on. 2020's changed the world in so many ways, but there's a lot of people who are becoming very conscious that they are not living their fulfillment of their life's purpose. And there's a lot of stuff thrown around about that, and it's a bit of a catch phrase, and are you living your life's purpose? Well, there's a very big difference between success and fulfillment, and I will go over that. But I developed so many different illnesses. I had 5 autoimmune diseases. Wow. Systemic endometriosis. I'd been chopped up by surgery 14 times by the age of 29, a hysterectomy at 29, horrific hormone therapy. And by the age of 33, I was bedridden. That I was so sick I could no longer get out of bed. After the army, I was very seriously injured in the army, smashed my hip, left me lower limb disabled. So pain and suffering was actually a normal state for me. And I'd like the listeners to really reflect on their life right now. Is their normal state suffering? Because a lot of people are, but they think it just is because it is. But it's normally a layering of all of these different things that's happened to them in life, and they haven't been able to process them. And I even though I was going through all of this sickness, all of this, I was still striving. I went to university and became a medical scientist. I always had to get the next thing of achievement, because as a little girl, if I won, I got a little bit more attention. But as that almost became an obsession for me to keep winning, to keep succeeding, to keep achieving things, because it created significance in my mind anyway. And as we know, one of the 6 human needs is significance. And the whole time, I was never fulfilled. I would succeed. It's like, what's the next thing? I was like a badass. I was hard. I got called Ice Maiden. That's not very warming at all. Is just like, you've no excuses. You've just got to do it. If I can do it, you can. That kind of. But that was me trying to be in control of my life. So you can look successful and great on the outside, but total train wreck on the inside, and that was me. So after my hysterectomy, lying in bed, no job, my marriage was falling apart. I had a couple of abusive marriages as well. As you do, you get back into what you're emotionally connected to, even though you don't like it. There's a really big message in that. We remain in things that we don't like, because moving out of that, the brain puts up a big, almost like a safety net, saying, don't go into uncharted territories. You've tried that before. That you've failed every single time you've done that. So, we go through all of this stuff that keeps us from breaking through that barrier and that barrier and that barrier. I was medical scientist, facing bankruptcy with my second husband. I went through, while I was working and in between marriages, I saved all my money, got a couple of investment properties. And with my second husband, he wanted to go into small business. And little naive me, he said, well, I can buy the business if, we use your properties as equity and go guarantor. And I said, yeah, why not? You know where the story goes, don't you? The business went broke. He walked away. And I had a $500,000 debt, facing bankruptcy, and was left homeless. So there's a lot of things that I've been able to tick off my list of life experience.
Wow.
And I went into holistic health because I thought Western medicine has come as far as it has, has told me that they can help me, which I know that there's a way, there's a solution. One thing that, because of this little inner voice, and I want everybody to understand that they have it, they're just not being quiet enough to listen. The whispers are there. That's that gut feeling, that little intuitive thing, which comes out every now and then when our head's not dominating everything because we're so stressed and overwhelmed. That you will find a solution, Lisa. You will find a way. You always do. And so that, for me, was my next step forward, always the next step and the next step. And so I was introduced to, I'd tried a lot of products, a lot of herbs, a lot of natural therapies. And because the endo was in my gut, so, I just had no gut health, no immune health. And nothing ever stayed in my body, not even water. It was just like whoop, straight through. And so I got hold of some natural products that really started to heal my gut, which gave me some strength to be able to then look for real healing. How can I get myself out of this mess? Because 33, bedridden, no home, no job, like it was pretty bad. And no family. I'd been alone. I disconnected from my mother and her husband when I was 20, completely. It was several ties. Conversation with her psychiatrist when I was about 16. He said to my sister and I, Lisa, you've got two choices. Either get out of there and completely cut ties with your mother, or stay and perish. And that inner voice said, get the heck out of there, girl, because the writing was on the wall for her life to never change. And she was on so many psychotropic medications, in and out of psychiatric institutes, like it was full on. And I needed to look after me. And that was a huge decision to make as a young person. And so I had no other family. So pretty much from a little girl, it was me. It's going to be, it's up to me. Those words are very real. And so I really started to focus on nutrition. I started to focus on helping people who had poor health and poor weight management, but doing it through a real natural process of nutrition, movement, and mindset, because I knew that they all needed to be together. And so I've done that. Well, I've really done that for the last 20 years as a belly-to-belly style business, and helped thousands and thousands of predominantly women. I've helped a lot of men. I'm with a wonderful man that has been part of my life now for 20 years. So he's sort of like the muscle guy who helps the men. I I help the women. But there's a beautiful blend in between. And one of the biggest things that I've found, Dr. Renee, is especially with women, because of course, I don't know if anybody's ever read the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. It's so true.
It's an oldie but a goodie, right?
Yep, chalk and cheese, yin and yang. It's the perfect opposite ends of the pole. And what I've found is that because women really lead with their heart, they're the nurturers, they're the the reproduction part of society, is that we can still be so emotionally trapped in all of our stuff that we grew up with, that it doesn't matter how much you work on your nutrition, your fitness, or your mindset. There's a core problem that people have of, as soon as they can have a great result, even a great result for a year or 2 or 3, but as soon as there's a major road bump in their life, their protection of their nervous system kicks back in, and they go back to exactly that place in time when they were in their state of suffering and survival. And so the last 12, 18 months, even though I've had that real holistic approach into my practice, I've done a dominant shift into helping people understand that they can literally reprogram their nervous system by doing certain things in a certain way, but it has to be from a holistic approach as well. It's like anything. You can't have, we take the wheel of a bicycle that's got spokes on it. If a couple of those spokes are broken, the wheel won't actually be able to function properly, and it will break eventually with the amount of pressure on there. And so I've taken that real 360 approach of, people talk about the wheel of life, of your health. I was exposed to that 20 years ago by the gentleman who was mentored by Paul J. Meyer, who created the wheel of life. So we're going back into like the great philosophers. I was even very blessed to be mentored by Mr. Jim Rohn.
Wow.
And yeah, like that's a huge wow factor. So a lot of what goes on in here is just like drowning my brain in Jim's personal development, his life philosophies, because some days I could not get out of bed. There were days where I didn't get out of bed, not even for hygiene. It was just like, I can't get out of this dark place. But there was always Jim. There was always somebody going in here to overwhelm the negative chatter going on. And that's what we have to do, is we have to interrupt the pattern. And so when you look at all of your life, like, how are you treating your health? What is your emotional status like? What's your social group like? What's your family like? What's your interaction in the family unit? Where are you with your career, your fulfillment? But where are you with your spiritual health? And so when we look at all of that from a complete 360 unit, that not balance, balance is impossible. It's a myth, but harmony is not. So when we think about how can we have those pieces in harmony and make sure that there are no major holes in the bucket of one segment, that we're not neglecting anything. So I teach people to find out what they are neglecting and then give them a solution of how to make it, repair it, and make it work for them. Because this is all about how you can fix you. I mean, you're not broken, but how can you, because none of us are broken. We're all, I believe we can all heal ourselves. And when we get the right tools, the right mentors, and put those things in the right order, and it's an evolution, because once we expand to a certain place, we don't go back. And so I've had hundreds of mentors. I still have a handful of who I think, are my brainstorm mastermind people. I never want to be the smartest person in the room. I'm always looking up and like, you got that right now. I want that. I'm going to look at what you do. I'm going to model that and take the pieces that are relevant to me right now, that resonate with me, and then implement that to see if that can help me get to the next step that I'm looking for forward. So what I've done is I've taken my 50-something years of mess, put it into what I believe is the wheel of life. But the most important factor in there is consciously rewiring our subconscious nervous system, those patterns of survival that we're stuck in, that keep sticking up their ugly head when there's a road bump in our life, a crisis in our life. But also learning how to overcome these. Like, I've had so many times where this visceral response happens in my body, my heart rate increases, I break out in a sweat, I feel panic, and then it's just a matter of coming back in, and breath changes a lot of things. It's the first thing we do when we are born. It's the last thing we do before we pass. So breath is a major controller of our nervous system. And so doing that with particular types of rewiring, audible meditation, which you could classify as possibly hypnosis, but it's guided meditation with sound, and then, of course, other daily practices. And it sounds like it takes a lot of time, but it doesn't. It's like anything. You brush your teeth without thinking. And if I asked you to swap hands and try and do it the other way, it's just like, ooh, that hurts, Yeah. Because our nervous system is on autopilot here. So it's just like anything. Our little daily practices start to become an unconscious wiring as well. And in the medical world, we know it takes 66 days to rewire a new neural pathway for it to start to connect. And then we have to consolidate that. So it's consistent activity of continually doing it over and over and over again until you don't have to think about it. And then those positive feelings of emotion are now the common trait in your nervous system, not the survival and the panic, and the overwhelm and the anxiety of not finding a way out. So that was sort of in a nutshell, my life and how I got here.
Wow. Yeah. And that's the thing. You wear so many hats, public speaker, holistic health expert, leadership, mindfulness, and life coach, author, scientist, neuroscience researcher. Like you got it all. But you've had a lot of challenges along the way, if you want to call them challenges. I mean, obstacles, struggles. How were you able to reframe that? Like, how can the listeners, because the listeners might resonate with a couple of things you just said.
Yeah.
Maybe not, they haven't gone through everything you've gone through, but like, you've come out the other side and you're beautiful and you're healthy and you're radiant and all the things. Like, how'd you overcome such adversity and reframe it I don't even know if you reframe it in a positive light, but how did you do that?
It was really just, I keep coming back to this inner voice. Anyone who's in the midst of crisis, or they've been in this chronic, traumatic, horrible situation for a long time, it's a matter of, I used to have to stop, and quite often it was through my body forced me to stop. But to really take time out, and it was taking these little moments of time out of my life to look at it. It's just like, what is this? Why is this happening? And do I want it? And if I can assure you 100% of the answer was no, I didn't want it. What can you do to change it? You have that power. And it's about asking the question, because if we ask the right questions, we're going to have interesting downloads, or and thought, like that moment of thought, that's actually your guided intuition dropping something in there to say, pay attention. But also there could be an event happening or a person you meet. And it's about keeping your eyes open for everything that's going on in life, because everything is a sign of the next step, of either go that way or avoid there. And so that is really how I would reframe it, is I would ask myself what's the next right step, Lisa, that you can do to get yourself out of this horrible situation?
And listen to those little voices that might pop up, that so many of us like, oh,
Yeah.
what is that? Like that can't happen. Or how is that? Don't ask the how, just trust it, that's the next guided step that you need to take. Right.
Yes, yes. And if we constantly think about the process of how am I going to do it, you're going to just be stuck. You're going to be
Mhm.
feeling overwhelmed. Quite often it's who are you going to bring into your world? And sometimes you think that they just arrive, but you're attracting them into your world to help you get to the next step.
Mhm.
And we have millions of resources online. There are no excuses for people to not plug into something. I would spend 24/7 plugged in sometimes because I had terrible insomnia as well. Um, and so it was constantly putting input in. And that in itself, uh, when you're not listening to the 70,000 thoughts you have a day, which
Mhm.
is generally 90% of what you did yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before, they're all redundant thoughts,
Mhm.
then we can actually start to make a step forward.
Mhm. Got
And
it.
that's all we need. We just need to take the next step.
Yeah. Now you actually touched on this a little bit, you know, because I was going to ask you, like, why is it so hard to change? And you referenced this earlier by saying, like, our brains just try to keep us safe, right? We don't want to go into that zone of uncertainty. We want to stay in where we're certain. Like,
Yes.
are there other reasons why it's hard for us to change? Because again, you kept going back and even had relationships that were very similar to what you were used to. Like, why is it so hard?
Yes. Uh, because from my experience into understanding the neuroscience and being a scientist, my job was to look down a microscope to look at cells.
Mhm.
And when you go into the basic um, microscopic atomic particles of cells, is we are energy. Cells are just vibrating energy. Humans are just vibrating energy in a human form with arms and legs.
Mhm.
And when you are in a very low emotional state, it's like attract alike. And so we attract negativity into our life. Negative thoughts create negative emotions, negative feelings, negative attraction to us. And that the law of attraction is real. it's
Mhm.
it's quantum physics. Um, and because we are just in that vibration, that is what we're getting more of. And so when we are trying to change, we're not changing our state,
Mm.
we're staying where we are. So we actually have to elevate our state and interrupt that low vibration and learn how to bring our vibration up. And that sounds all woo and weird and oh my gosh, that sounds complicated, but it's not. It's the next step of learning how to go within with tools and techniques to start raising. And because I was always listening to personal development, that is raising your vibration alone.
Mhm.
Beautiful people like you who have podcasts to bring voice to this space of trauma and tragedy and
Mhm.
all of these things is bringing awareness and giving people hope, planting seeds
Mhm.
of hope,
Mhm.
and raising the vibration of the listener, thinking, wow, if that lady could do it, maybe I could do it. And
Mhm.
so it's just those little increments that are so important.
I love that. And not staying in that low vibrational state, right? Like trying to make a conscious effort to raise it, because that's where we stay stuck, when we stay in that
Yes.
low vibrational
Yes.
state. And you have to want to. I mean, I think after a while, it's just that you couldn't go any lower, right? Like there was only one place to go, and that was up, and only you could do it, like you said. So
Yes.
no one could do it for you. So, but you did it. So, like you said, oops, you're an inspiration to all of us. So thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about stress, because stress is a big topic I have had my share of stress as well. And, I know a lot of listeners, we all have stress, right? Different levels, but I feel like there's this overarching theme of like just really high levels of stress since the pandemic and
Yes.
before, but I feel like it's even worse now. Um, can you explain what happens to our mind and our body during chronic stress?
Yes. Devastation.
Mhm.
um, well, these repetitive thoughts. Um, I've, I'm just going to change my screen filter because I put my blue light filter on. There is a cue, my friends. Um, Reduce the amount of blue light coming into your
Mm,
brain. It's 2:30 a.m. here, so I've got all my filters on. Um, that Gosh, I touched on it. We have so much input coming in, that what research is finding is that we're having dopamine burnout. We
mhm,
are grabbing so many instant gratification moments of
mhm,
fast food, of Netflix, of internet scroll, of we just need this quick fix because we're feeling so low that our
mhm,
nervous system is actually constantly in a state of um, the stress hormones. And we, the animals are designed to have the fight and flight response come in momentarily, and then we come back to a state of regulation.
mhm,
But um, I mean, anybody who's had adversity in their life and have chronic moments of like chronic days, weeks of ongoing stress, they will have dysregulation in their system because it's very damaging to our cells and to our hormones, and then it has this cascade effect. Like everything, it just ripples into um, every aspect of our life.
mhm,
But where since 2020 there's been research across 160 countries of so many people, including youth,
mhm,
that over 70% of them now suffer with some degree of anxiety or overwhelm, and that it's adversely affecting their health. Because what happens is when the brain is set in survival, we get the damaging cortisol and hormones of stress constantly flooding our body. And what that does, it actually changes the expression on our cells. Where this is going into what we call epigenetics. It's about our gene expression, and your food, your environment, your visual input, your auditory input, um, all of these stimuluses from external actually can change our gene expression as well. So
mhm,
it can completely change a wonderful, healthy human being into a sick, stressed, overwhelmed mess, because of that constant toxic input. And where our vibrations drop right down, we're right
mhm,
down here, and we're generally not open uh, to change quickly because
mhm,
we are in such a low state,
mhm,
and people are feeling lost and stuck and confused. But also, I blame social media a lot for that.
mhm,
There is a lot of people preying on the mental health game, all of these things that people are vulnerable right now more than ever. And the worst part is our children are exposed to this,
mhm.
and we're not, because we are a mess, we're not policing the real damage happening to our kids right now.
Yeah.
And so they're like, I'll stand on my soapbox and disrupt status quo, because we need to wake up. We need to take responsibility for ourselves, and we need to then make sure we protect our children, because they are so much more vulnerable than us. We've got our big pants on. We can, step into our own power because there are tools available.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I just really I felt like I needed to say that right now.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. We need that reminder. All of us need that reminder. Um, and you've referenced this a few times, but what exactly is involved when we try to rewire our brains and our nervous system? Like what do we have to do?
The first step is to acknowledge that you're going to, is to decide.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you just say, I'm going to, you can say that without having decided that you're going to commit. There's a difference between being interested and committing.
Mm-hmm.
Committing in my books is burning the bridges and not going back. You're going to do whatever it takes to whatever way you can with your current lifestyle and your current commitments to do what is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes back to that wheel of life. We have to start to break our life down into little pieces. Big goals are broken down into bite-sized pieces, into increments.
Mm-hmm.
So we look at our brain health, our lifestyle habits, all of these things. But then we also, to be able to change that, it's a process. The most important thing is to, and it's about our different brain waves. In our daily conscious state, we're in beta waves, which are normally high frequency, a lot of chaos generally, because we've got so many thoughts coming in. And we've got to bring it down to the brain waves through the way I do it is through sound and guided meditation, for the conscious brain to tap into the subconscious and to give it instruction of, and it's not positive chanting affirmations. Most people who do affirmations are doing it in their negative state.
Mm-hmm.
So they're attaching something positive to a negative emotion, which means it's not going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And so we know that sound
Mm-hmm.
is frequency. And so when we do it with sound, particular sound waves, it raises our vibrational frequency while we're putting a new program in, and then it starts to rewire the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And that progressive process, that has to be done every day. Like there are days where during my my great healing process, where I might not have been able to spend 5 minutes on myself
Mm-hmm.
because I was so sick and I would just cry all day.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about, okay, what can I do today? I can do 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And and guess what? That is an accomplishment. That is a celebration. So we don't recognize the little things that we do because we think that doing good is just like massive things,
Mm-hmm.
but we forget about all the little things that we do in our day that is great.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a morning and afternoon and an evening routine which actually bookends my day. So my brain wakes up with good stuff and my brain goes to bed with good stuff. And if people saw my list, sometimes they would think, gosh, that seems insignificant. And it could be that I smiled at somebody today and they were walking with their head down and looked sad, and I smiled at them, and then their face lit up because somebody made eye contact with them. We've got to think about all these human connection things that we don't do in our day as well.
Mm-hmm.
But connecting with yourself
Mm-hmm.
is one of the most important things. And a lot of people don't want to get still because they don't like this negative chatter going on that is nonstop. So we have to reprogram that and overwhelm that.
Got it. Wow. So when you reference like meditations or sound, like where can the listeners get, and you say daily, they have to listen to this. So like where can they get resources like this?
That's part of my practice, but
Yeah.
what I did was YouTube is an incredible source of, you could just Google high vibration frequency, those things,
Mm-hmm.
and it's put into melody.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, sound without words is really what you want. It's
Mm-hmm.
because the brain doesn't have to think. If we're reading a book, our brain is engaged. If we're
Mm-hmm.
listening to a song, our brain is engaged. So it's about disengaging.
Mm-hmm.
And then even just focusing on your in-breath and your out-breath, something that simple, even just that little practice of 2 minutes a day of getting still is really powerful, of you starting to of meeting yourself and getting comfortable with that. People are not comfortable with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Most people can't even look at themselves in the mirror directly into their eyes because they have such low self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you should try looking in the mirror, looking right into your eyes and smiling and saying, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
That is a powerful practice. You might not believe it for the first 300 times, but
And it may be hard to do, but
very hard to do. Very hard to do. And generally the first reaction is somebody laughing at themselves or crying
Mm-hmm.
as a defense.
Mm-hmm.
But it's powerful once you get to that point of really saying, I love you, I've missed you, I hear you, I see you, I'm here to protect you. Oh, these are so powerful. Whew, getting all emotional here.
So you talked about a morning and an evening routine. So like that is how I usually end asking my experts, my guests, if they have one. So that was a nice segue into the next question of what exactly is your morning routine and your evening routine?
As I mentioned, Mr. Jim Rohn has been a great influence in my life, and um, I've been surrounded by some great thought leaders during my journey, and and for people who don't know Jim Rohn, he was actually Tony Robbins' mentor.
Mm.
So pretty powerful, very powerful indeed. But I was taught that if you get up while your brain is still in those theta waves, like this is the changing the subconscious brain wave, and and then you put a certain practice in place of um, being thankful. You know, the gratitude thing is also been flogged around a fair bit because people really don't understand the very deep spiritual meaning of that. But the gratitude, the positive input for what you want to achieve and living that out in your mind. And so my morning practice for a very long time, and it's varied in time over the years based around children growing up, work commitments, all of these different things. But I would always make sure that and I deal with a lot of mums as well. So it's about how can you juggle all of that. But the beautiful thing with technology is that we can put earbuds in, like one ear in, one ear for the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about changing our state as soon as we get up, of breath work, of elevating our vibration, of having that short gratitude list, of working on what your goals and dreams are, and also getting good nutrition and hydration into the body and moving the body. They're the core things for really having your body in peak state
Mm-hmm.
as you before your day starts, before the rest of the world dumps their garbage on you.
Mm-hmm.
I do not check my cell phone. It's on flight mode for the first 3 hours of my day because I
Mm-hmm.
do not want any interruption coming in. Because as soon as I put my attention out, I'm now answering the needs of other people, and I got to fill up my cup first.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I have a particular morning routine on my website. I even do one-on-one coaching, just individually help people. Like I do a session with them to take them through a very powerful breathwork session, plus implement a morning routine that's going to suit their lifestyle based around their current needs and how they can adapt it as their life changes. So and then so that's the morning bookend, and then at the end of the day, I've got it here. I've got my little book that I just jot down 3 or 4 things that went well. It's not that what I did great, because sometimes I wasn't necessarily doing great, but hey, I did something. I got out of bed and I had a shower. I drank my water today. These were back in the day of the basic things that sometimes I didn't get out of bed. Sometimes I didn't shower. But what did I do? I survived the day.
Yeah.
We've got to acknowledge those things.
Yeah. That's why I find so many women, they fall into bed at night thinking what they didn't get done in the day.
Yes.
Right. And like, we don't sit there and like, even the small wins throughout the day, like it may not. And like you said, I have a lot of women hit snooze 10 times before getting out of bed. Maybe this morning was only 5, right? Like, so you did not hit it, but like maybe it was only 5 times versus 10. Like that is a win. And especially it's something that you want to work towards no longer doing. And so I feel like that's powerful because it helps you acknowledge and become very aware of like the good in the day and what went well.
Yeah. If I can say anything to anybody is, don't put your phone on flight mode. Do not touch it for at least an hour in the morning. Start with that, because you don't want to put your brain into that same old pattern of seeing those people who have got everything. They've got the great bodies. They're always winning. Well, they're not. I mean, this is the most fake thing that you can expose your brain to, but it's creating that autonomic dopamine. I'm getting my hit. As much as I hate it, I'm getting my hit.
Yep. I agree. And you're already waking up feeling you're feeling bad about yourself because you don't look like that, or you can't get up and work out first thing yet. Right. Like, so you wake up and you just scroll to all the people that you want to be like, but you're not. And so you beat yourself up, and that's not the way to start the day.
No.
Or opening your emails, right? And like you said, where everyone else needs you, it's like, wait, you need yourself first, and you need to dedicate at least that first hour to yourself.
Yes. You've got holes in your bucket. I remember I talked about the wheel of life. There's holes in the bucket. Don't keep pouring stuff into something that's just pouring out the bottom. You've got to mend those holes. And some basic core fundamentals of good health practices. One of them is do not turn your phone on in the morning.
Absolutely. So that's kind of an easy thing to do. Again, talking about routine, some women find it really hard. Well, that's one really easy self-care thing that you can do first thing is just keep it in flight mode, turn it off. There's been mornings I'm like, where's my phone? I don't even know. It's still like in my bedroom. It's like far away from me. I was like, oh, I never even unplugged it. It's been, in the same spot as when I got out of bed, because I didn't even go on it. So that is something that I try to do myself. So final question, then I'm gonna get you back to bed because it's almost 3:00 in the morning.
Yes.
We gotta get you some sleep. And for the listeners, she did say she went to bed a little earlier and then got up, showered to do the interview, and now she's going to go take a little nap again till normal waking hours in Australia. But what is one thing that you know now that you wish you knew? For you, maybe it's 5 or 10 years ago, or maybe even longer. What's that one thing? Or there's maybe Maddie, just pick one thing.
Yes. I'll close with this story. A lot of us don't know we're angry. And it was about 12 years ago, it was 2011 in Singapore at a leadership conference. And the speakers on stage were Korean, beautiful husband and wife. So it was all through translation. And you could just feel the love coming out of them. Like they were just spiritual, they were beautiful, they were funny, they were just joy. And they had a picture of a big blue door up on the screen. And in the Buddhist philosophy, the blue door is the doorway to joy and happiness. So it was quite relevant for them. But they put a different slant on it. They just said, is your door opened or closed? And they said the blue door is the doorway to your heart. And at that moment, I had this crushing, overwhelming pain on my chest. And I just burst out crying. And I just thought, all of these years, I've actually had my heart locked, closed, since that little 4-year-old girl watched her daddy walk out the door, not knowing why she wasn't loved. And the saddest part about that was, yes, you can certainly prevent a lot of hurt coming in, but you can't accept love in either. And especially love for yourself. And at that moment, I just had this weight lifted off. It wasn't off my chest. It was just like off my soul. Like it was a real life moving event where at that moment I just thought, I need to open my heart. And from there, my life went on this incredible trajectory, because I was living, I was hustling, I was grinding in angry desire for all those years of needing to succeed for significance, but I was unfulfilled. And at that moment, it turned into inspired desire. And so I know everything happens for us in a particular way, but gosh, if I had have known I was angry a lot earlier than that, then I think, I could have started to make impact earlier than that, because that's now my life's purpose of helping people just step into their superpower and take all those layers off that is not our true self, that other people have put on there.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Thank you.
How can the listeners connect with you? Where can they find you? Where do you like to hang out? I know you don't really love social media a lot, but where can they find you? And where can they find your resources?
Yeah, for sure. I am on socials because I just teach my thing and share a little bit of my lifestyle on there. But it's actually my name, so lisamarree.com. And I will spell it because people get a bit stuck on the last name. So it's Lisa, L-I-S-A, and Marree, MARREE.com. So I've got beautiful free resources on there. I've got my morning routine on there. So yeah, please reach out. And there's a little chat bubble as well. So happy to connect with people.
Yes, connect with her, but we'll let you get a little bit of sleep right now. She'll respond when she wakes up. But well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you getting up in the middle of the night there just to chat and really serve as a huge inspiration for all of us, but really share your wealth of knowledge and years of experience and personal struggle, which you have really turned into your story, your powerful story. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
And with that, I'm out of here. Talk to you again soon.